Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm reading one of my favorite books, and this is called The Education of Little Tree by Forrest Carter. We went to church every Sunday. We walked the same trail that me and Grandpa used to deliver our wares, where the church was a mile past the Crossroads store. We had to leave at daybreak, for it was a long walk. Grandpa put on his black suit and the mill sack shirt that Grandma had bleached white. I had one too, and wore clean overalls. Me and Grandpa buttoned up the top buttons of our shirts, which made us look proper for church. Grandpa wore his black shoes that he tallowed to shine. The shoes clumped when he walked. He was used to moccasins. I figured it was a painful walk for Grandpa, but he never said anything, just clumped along. Me and Grandma had it easier. We wore moccasins. I was proud of how Grandma looked. Every Sunday she wore a dress that was orange and gold and blue and red. It struck her at the ankles and mushroomed out around her. She looked like a spring flower floating down the trail. If it hadn't been for the dress and Grandma enjoying the outing so much, I suspicion that Grandpa would have never gone to church. Not counting the shoes, he never taken much to churchin'. Grandpa said the preacher and the deacons pretty much had a chokehold on religion. He said they'd done the determining on who was going to hell and who wasn't, and if a fellow didn't watch it, pretty soon he was worshiping the preacher and the deacons. So he said to hell with it, but he didn't complain. I liked to walk to church. We didn't have to carry our load of wares, and we walked the cut-off trail, and day broke ahead of us. The sun hit the dew on the valley down below and made the tree patterns where we walked. The church set back off the road in a scope of trees. It was little, wasn't painted, but it was neat. Every Sunday when we walked in the church clearing, Grandma stopped to talk to some women, but me and Grandpa, we headed straight for Willow John. He always stood back in the trees, always away from people and the church. He was older than Grandpa, but he was as tall, full Cherokee with white-plaited hair hanging below his shoulders and a flat-brimmed hat pulled low to his eyes. Like the eyes were private. When he looked at you, you knew why. The eyes were black, open wounds, not angry wounds, but dead wounds that lay bare without life. You couldn't tell if the eyes were dim or if Willow John was looking past you in a dimness far away. Once in later years, an Apache showed me a picture of an old man. It was Geronimo. He had eyes of Willow John. Willow John was over 80. Grandpa said that long ago Willow John had gone to the nations. He had walked the mountains and would not ride in a car or train. He was gone 3 years and came back, but he would not talk of it. He would only say that there was no nation. And so we always walked to him. Standing back in the trees, Grandpa and Willow John put their arms around each other and held each other for a long time. Two tall old men with big hats, and they didn't say anything. Then Grandma would come and Willow John would stoop, and they would hold each other for a long time. Willow John lived past the church, far back in the mountains, and so the church being about halfway between us, it was the place that they could meet. I told Willow John there's going to be a lot of Cherokees before long. I told him I was going to be a Cherokee, that Grandma said I was natural born of the mountains and had the feeling of the trees. Willow John touched my shoulder, and his eyes showed a far back twinkle. Grandma said it was the first time he had looked like that in many years.
Oh, the bishop and the ghost of the Nazarene cried a puzzle of a tear over what they'd seen. And the pedestal with the scimitar feet held the Constantine bill of confirmation. All the homicide and the steam shovel blues together made the ultimate news, with a mission to terrify and confuse all the merchants and the market celebration. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am coming in my rocket machine. Hallelujah, hallelujah, said the bishop to the ghost of the Nazarene. On the saber-tooth rat radio man made the purpose of the media to liberalize, but the plan was intercepted by the satellite, and the dialogue of the diatribe was begun. Oh, the concept of the conflict arose, antecedent to what anyone knows, and the hijack of the holy prose was the discharge of the disciples' gun. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am coming in my rocket machine. Hallelujah, hallelujah, said the bishop to the ghost of the Nazarene. Of the Nazarene discussed the fatal flaw of the war machine, while the goons of the interior kept the margins clean with the New Testament and the Prince of Wales, with the privilege to rehearse on a salary. All the Telcanies took it to the balconies in a bid to keep the peasants on their knees, with non-cooperation in their flapping tails. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am coming in my rocket machine. Hallelujah, hallelujah, said the bishop to the ghost. Tell you of the interim of the hologram projected on a piece of film, the fighter's false horizon honing in to dump the cruel-hearted crusade on the cathode beams across the checkerboard. The coral snake divides into a chord. The enchanter is a gentleman with a sword, and in increments the labyrinth is laid.